In a world addicted to noise, what power lies in your silence? They say the world has never been louder, and yet it has never been emptier. 1,000 voices scream from a device that fits in your palm, demands, distractions, opinions, invitations to argue. The ceaseless buzz of comparison, the constant barrage of urgency. Everyone talks. Few listen. Everyone posts. Few reflect. And in the middle of this noise, you, drowning in a tide of stimulation that was never meant to be natural. You weren't built for this level of input. No human was. I have known the roar of battle, the pressure of court, the subtle manipulations of those who seek control through noise. I've walked through crowds demanding my attention, and I've sat in the silence of my own chambers when the weight of the empire rested on my breath. I have seen two kinds of men, those pulled by the noise and those anchored in silence. This journal entry is for the second kind, or for those who wish to become it. Because in a world that shouts, to be still is to become powerful. The question is not how loud life gets. It's whether you can find yourself when it does. They want you to believe you are falling behind. Every scroll of the finger is another comparison, another headline of doom, another call to action. Do this. Buy that. React now. What they never tell you is that most of it is noise. White, mind-numbing, soul-deadening noise. The world rewards speed, not substance. But silence? Stillness? That's where truth lives. In Rome, we had messengers on horseback. In your world, they travel at the speed of light. But the illusion remains the same, that urgency equals importance. That if you're not reacting, you're irrelevant. I have found the opposite to be true. The most meaningful movements in my life were silent. The most transformative decisions I ever made came in stillness. And the most powerful men I knew were not those who shouted loudest, but those who did not need to speak at all. You do not find strength by winning every argument. You find strength by mastering the desire to even enter one. And if the whole world runs west, shouting, the wise man walks east, silent. There is no strength in silence unless it is chosen. The silence of fear is weakness. The silence of mastery is command. To become truly silent is not to flee the world, but to rise above its frequency. It is to step back, not out of fear, but to gain perspective. There were days I removed myself from the Senate chamber, not to neglect duty, but to hear the one voice that mattered, my own. There were mornings I watched the sun rise in total silence, just to remind myself that some rhythms remain pure, untouched by empire or ego. Your silence will disturb those who need you loud and reactive. Good. Let it disturb them. Because silence is not passivity. It is preparation. Stillness is the crucible of clarity. Withdraw not in defeat, but in defiance of distraction. Do not explain. Do not announce. Just vanish, even for an hour, and return with your power intact. It is a strange irony, how the louder the world becomes, the less it says. In the noise, truths are buried. In the rush, wisdom is forgotten. And in the endless talking, no one really hears. But if you withdraw, if you dare to go quiet, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear not the world, but reality. You begin to notice how few of your thoughts are truly your own. You observe how much of your reaction is inherited, conditioned, borrowed. In the silence, you can hear the truth. Not the truth of news or opinion. The deeper truth. The one that doesn't shout but whispers, always has. It is the truth of who you are beneath roles, masks, and momentum. The truth of what matters when no one is watching. And it speaks not in words, but in presence. To hear it, you must step into solitude, not the absence of people, but the absence of noise. I have found more clarity in the quiet gaze of a single sunrise than in a year of conversations. You may think silence isolates you from others, but the opposite is true. Only when you have faced your own mind, without music, distraction, or performance, can you truly connect with another human soul. Because silence teaches you how to listen. And listening is one of the rarest forms of love. There is a strength that the modern world does not understand. It is not the strength to reply quickly. It is not the strength to be seen, to dominate, to win in conversation. It is the strength not to react. Imagine this, you are insulted. Someone tries to provoke you, belittle you, diminish you. Most will fire back instantly. That is easy. That is expected. But if you pause, if you simply breathe and do nothing, you dismantle their control. Your silence is not weakness, it is sovereignty. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every slight needs a response. Not every attack is worth answering. I learned this lesson not in books, but in the heat of betrayal. Not once, but many times I was lied to, challenged, slandered. And still I remained unmoved. Because I had trained myself to recognize what mattered. I had practiced non-reaction as a discipline. And when you master it, the world loses its grip on your peace. You will know you are growing when peace becomes your instinct, not your effort. The world often misinterprets stillness. They think it means absence, a lack of power, a void. But stillness is a statement, a message, a challenge. It tells the world, I am not moved by your chaos. I am not fed by your drama. I do not need your approval to be whole. That is a radical act in any era. To walk through noise and remain calm. To be surrounded by opinions and remain true. To see the spectacle and not become part of it. This is not retreat. This is revolution. Stillness is not hiding. It is anchoring. To sit with yourself, without distraction, is to reclaim your life from the thieves of attention. And to those who ask why you don't speak or post or react, you simply smile. Because the louder they become, the quieter you grow. And in that silence, you become unshakable. Know this, your silence will be tested. The world does not like what it cannot control. It will prod you, provoke you, bait you. To make you flinch. To make you break character. To make you perform the drama it's addicted to. Your refusal to react will be misunderstood. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant, even weak. But do not explain yourself. Stillness does not need a press release. Let them talk. Let them misread your quiet. Let them fill the silence with their own projections. Because you are no longer trying to be understood. You are trying to understand. There were days I stood in the palace surrounded by sycophants and senators, all of them desperate to be heard. And I would say nothing. Because wisdom is not spoken to impress. It is spoken when silence has revealed the right moment. And often that moment never comes. So you hold your tongue, not from fear, but from power. Let the storms rage. You remain the mountain. There is a kind of silence that terrifies people. Not because it is empty, but because it is honest. It reveals things we'd rather avoid. Our loneliness, our regrets, our raw impulses, the truths buried under years of noise. But if you sit with that silence long enough, it transforms. What once felt like absence becomes presence. What once felt hollow becomes whole. You begin to hear your life clearly. Not the version shaped by others, but the one that has been waiting beneath the noise all along. This is the real gift of stillness. Not escape, but exposure. It is not peaceful at first, but it is purifying. And in time, you no longer crave constant input. You no longer need to react. You no longer fear being alone. Because you have found someone in the silence. Yourself. You will not be remembered for how loudly you spoke, but for the stillness you carried in chaos. The way your presence calmed storms. The way your restraint gave weight to your words. In Rome, some emperors shouted their decrees into the crowd. I preferred to speak less and mean more. There's a reason the most ancient wisdom was carved in stone, not yelled in the street. Stillness is not just a tool. It is a legacy. It is the mark of a life governed not by impulse, but by intention. What remains when your voice is gone? What echoes when your name is forgotten? It is the strength you carried inward, the peace you guarded fiercely, the silence you chose when others would have screamed. And perhaps, when another generation finds itself lost in the noise, they will look back, not for answers, but for the example of someone who chose to listen instead. There is a silence that is not emptiness, but completion. It is the silence after the last note of a symphony, the silence between waves as the tide settles, the silence in the mind when peace no longer needs to be explained. You do not arrive there by chance. You forge it through discipline, through choosing presence again and again, through resisting the seductive pull of noise dressed as relevance. Modern life will tell you, speak louder to matter. But the soul knows, speak less to mean more. For every 1,000 voices clamoring for attention, there is one who speaks with such depth that their silence carries the weight of truth. Be that one. In stillness, you will lose many things. Distractions, petty arguments, shallow relationships. But you will gain something far rarer. Clarity, depth, and the serenity of a self no longer in conflict. And this is true power. Not the kind that conquers others, but the kind that commands oneself. That, to me, is the definition of freedom. To walk through noise and remain unshaken. To be surrounded by chaos and stay undisturbed. To sit alone and feel whole. When the world is loud, become silent. Not to hide, not to surrender, but to master the only kingdom that truly matters, yourself.